I am so happy to say I'm officially a New Zealand permanent resident. So what does that look like? How did I do it? What was the process like? I'll get into all that, but before all that, I just hope it looks a lot more like things like this. Hey guys, well I did it. I got my permanent residence and we'll talk about the process and what that looks like and what it means. Right now we are walking on
Queenstown Trail around the Calvin Peninsula.
So yeah, very, very pretty area. So yeah, if I'm being totally honest, like yeah, 8-9 years ago was the first time I ever heard of the country of New Zealand. And it was never on my radar or anything like that to live here or be a permanent resident, much less, yeah, marry a citizen, much less have my baby be a citizen. So yeah, but man, I am just ecstatic that I am here and that I do have this. It's been such an amazing blessing. So my story of New Zealand permanent residence started, what, 9 years ago or 8 years ago when I met Naomi for the first time. And we met in Mozambique, Africa. We were both doing a Bible school / missions training school over in Mozambique with Iris Ministries, and met there, fell in love, and what, a year and a half later, got married, and that started the whole process. And when we first got married, we really felt like we were supposed to be in America for that season, and Naomi, throughout those 6 years that we were in America, got her US citizenship.
Yep.
And so she has dual citizenship, and then by birth, our daughter Nikita has dual US and New Zealand citizenship. But that left me kind of hanging.
So the normal process for a married couple is for you apply for a partner visa or partner residence visa, but if you meet certain requirements, you actually are able to get fast-tracked. And you can apply directly for a permanent residency visa, which in the US is known as a green card. We just call it a PR or permanent residency here. But yeah, so we actually met those criteria to fast track Nick into a permanent residency visa.
There you go.
You want to get all of the dirt off of there? Is that what it is? So one of those requirements was that Nick and I have been in a married or a stable relationship for more than 5 years, living in the same house for more than 5 years. So that was one of the requirements that we were able to meet to get Nick fast-tracked.
All right guys, we're gonna go to the bench over there just so, yeah, the daughter can throw rocks into the water. So I'm gonna do my best to recall what the actual process from start to finish of the application was. It's been, what, 10 months, so it might be a little hazy, but it was pretty simple to apply online through the immigration website. And one thing that I quickly learned between New Zealand and America's big difference in immigration is New Zealand's a pretty small country. There's what, 5 million people here or so? And yeah, you can just call like the government and they pick up and they say, hello, here's the government. And yeah, how close with the accent was that? And they're just so kind, and it's just amazing. You can ask them so many questions and they're extremely helpful, and it is just such a beautiful process as opposed to what I imagine it was going to be. So I submitted my application. One part of the application was they did need some kind of medical examination. So there was a specific doctor that I had to go to while I was in America when I initially applied. and they had
called a panel physician.
I had to go to a specific panel physician in America, and I lived in Chicago. So what? There's how many people in Chicago? Like
9 million.
Yeah, like 9 or 10 million or something like that. So double the population of New Zealand, and there was no panel physician in Chicagoland, which is kind of, yeah, it was kind of strange. So I had to drive what to Cincinnati, I believe it was.
It definitely wasn't Cincinnati.
Oh yeah, it was St. Louis. Yeah. So I had to drive down to St. Louis to go to the nearest panel physician, which wasn't a big deal. It was what, 10-hour drive or something like that, and I like road trips. So headed down there, he was super kind. I was in and out in what, like 30 minutes or an hour, and he did certain examinations on me. I actually can't really remember exactly what he was examining. I think he needed to make sure that I didn't have tuberculosis or something like that. So anyway, I passed that, got the examination, put that in with my application, and then we waited. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited. So we were waiting and waiting and waiting. We realized this is gonna take a long time, and what we heard was that it takes longer for them to process the residency visas when you are not inside of the New Zealand country. So we were overseas, so obviously we were offshore processing, which apparently just takes longer. So we did want to come to New Zealand. What we realized is let's apply for a tourist visa just so I can come into the country. We had to get a exemption for me to come in. The exemption was that my wife and daughter were citizens. We had actually already sold our house in America, and we were literally just kind of waiting for my visa to come in for us to come. So they approved the exemption because of those criteria, which is really nice of them. Thank you, New Zealand. And so once I got my tourist visa exemption, we came to New Zealand. We arrived October 1st and had to do the mandatory quarantine. My wife and daughter were citizens, like I said, so New Zealand again paid for the quarantine. It was extremely nice. I just happened to be tagging along, so I didn't have an expense just because the rooms were already booked under my wife's citizenship. And then when we were applying for the permanent resident visa, there was a big thing about fingerprints that Naomi was going to talk about that, yeah, I wasn't really a part of.
Yeah, we had to send in, or I had to send in my fingerprints, and I wasn't allowed to send them in with like the digital fingerprints. It had to be a specific type of ink. I guess there's multiple types of ink, and the one that they required was just very specific, and not many places had it. So we actually had to drive, it was like 4 or 5 hours to get to a place that would do that. So that was interesting as well as all the criminal history, background checks and everything that are pretty normal.
So once we were in managed isolation up in Auckland, we called immigration and we said, hey, we are officially in New Zealand. And they said, okay, great, we're gonna switch the processing to onshore processing for your residency visa. In the meantime, you're not able to work or anything like that because I am on a tourist visa, and it was it was a 3-month tourist visa, so I had to renew it if that residency visa wasn't going to come in within the 3 months either. So sure enough, 3 months passed and my residence visa had not come in yet, so we put in a request to extend my tourist visa, and that came back very quick, the extension, and for some reason it was a 2-year extension. So I'm not sure when they started doing that. I was very grateful, but I think I might have been an exception case because we already had the permanent residence visa submitted and in processing and everything like that. So yeah, they extended my tourist visa for 2 years, which is super cool. Meant I can come and go within New Zealand for 2 years and before applying for a new visa. But just a short few months after that, I finally got the approval for my permanent residence visa. So that's where we're at right now. So a couple of the things that they came back to me and requested some additional information was they just wanted to make sure that Naomi and I were in a stable marriage and living together for the past, well, we've been married for 7 years now. So yeah, they wanted to make sure we were living together and married for at least 5 years. So we were able to provide joint tax returns, all sorts of photos. And then we actually got some of our family and friends to write letters stating that they can verify that we have been married and we have been living together in a stable relationship. And then of course too, we have a daughter as well, and yeah, so both of us were on her birth certificate, which definitely helps. And yeah, so there was just a lot of different verification that they had to do throughout the whole process. It took about, what would you say, from start to finish, about 10 months or so?
March or April when we applied, and yeah, just only got it, so about a year.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, about a year or so, I think it would have taken longer if we stayed on overseas processing. It was really nice they were able to switch it to onshore processing for us. But with all this said, I think the process is like entirely different if you're not married to Kiwi. So yeah, if you guys are just watching this just to figure out how you can get into New Zealand, I'm really sorry. I don't I don't have any tips or anything like that for you. But we're really excited that we're here, at least for the time being, and I have full access. The permanent residency visa paperwork was really, really cool. It said you have this permanent resident visa for your life. And so yeah, thank you, New Zealand. We appreciate you. It also means that I'm able to work here in New Zealand and, of course, pay New Zealand taxes as well, which, yeah, it is what it is. Well, hey, guys, we are heading back to our walk. So from here, the next step would be getting citizenship in New Zealand. Not sure if that's going to happen. There's a lot more criteria that I'm going to have to meet to actually get that. I'm not sure if it's going to line up. It might. The only difference that New Zealand citizenship gets me that permanent residency doesn't is essentially the security of being a citizen. For things like if I just happen to commit a felony or something like that, I don't get deported, and yeah, things like that. And a New Zealand passport is kind of sought over, so yeah, there's certain benefits of being a citizen that yeah, just an American citizen doesn't get me. Naomi just pointed out
I can go to Cuba and Nick can.
And the main reason I'm so grateful I have permanent residency here is simply because it just means that Naomi, I, and our children will never be split up ever. We can always go to the same country, whether it's America or New Zealand at this point, and it's not like we'll be stuck in one place or another. So that's actually the reason that we really wanted this, and we're so grateful for that reason is accomplished. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate you all. Hope you learned a little bit. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll help you as best I possibly can, but realizing my process was potentially a little different than most people's. But yeah, you guys, if this is your first time watching, we would really appreciate a subscribe. Our daughter, for some reason, doesn't want to go on this walk until you hit that subscribe button. So yeah, just kidding. Appreciate you all. Have a very, very blessed day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.